Thank you guys all for coming back. We are excited. We have a great lineup this morning, and we're starting off with three incredible leaders that are also good friends and have a huge heart for groups ministry. I have the honor of moderating this panel on coaching, how to care for your leaders. And I've been looking forward to hearing from these guys, and I've heard from them multiple times, and I always learn something new. And so there are nuggets to be had, and different, you may have read their books, you may know something about their systems, but I bet there's something, as Bill prayed, that God will nudge you towards. So I encourage you to listen well and to chat your questions on there. We're gonna have the same format we had last time, where each of them will get 8-ish minutes. Now there's 3 of you, so we have to divide up. And Steve is the cleanup. So basically, if you guys use up all the minutes, poor Steve will have less. This is how it goes.
Oh, well.
So
things ought to be.
the way exactly, Bill. And Bill, I'm giving you a heads up. You're going to be the leadoff hitter. So there you are. But let me tell you a little bit about them in case you are joining us today and weren't able to be here yesterday. Our panelists are 3 incredible leaders from 3 churches that have very different, distinct small groups ministry models, which is so great because, again, as we said yesterday, there's no one perfect system. If you came here looking for the perfect system, sad to say, you're not going to find it. But there are many great systems that God will use in your culture, in your church organizational context. And so these are 3 models to glean from. So Steve Gladen is from Saddleback Church, where he's been serving as a small groups pastor since 1998. And Bill Willits serves as executive director of adult ministry environments at North Point Ministries in Atlanta. And they're joined today by Dave Enns, who is the lead pastor of small groups from North Coast Church, better known, Dave, as Sticky Church, with Larry Osborne from San Diego area, where he's been serving since 1990. When they were 1 campus, and now they're multi-site with 7 campuses. All 3 of these guys are fantastic pastors. Each of them have at least 25, I'm thinking 30-ish maybe. I don't want to expose your ages, gentlemen. So let's just say lots of experience, lots of wisdom, and have a huge heart for groups and for that house-to-house movement. So they have different models, and let's get started. So each of you, Bill, you'll be kicking us off. I will be sharing about 8 minutes on your model for coaching leaders. And obviously coaching leaders is a huge part of what we talked about yesterday in terms of training leaders. And Bill alluded to some of those pieces yesterday morning as well. So now I get a chance to expand on that.
Right.
So Bill, tell us, what is your coaching model and how does it all work?
Okay. Thank you, Caroline. Yes, we are very grateful for you trying to herd the proverbial cats, and wish you well on your assignment. Whatever you're being compensated for on earth, just know great is your reward in heaven. So that's right. Well, our coaching model through the years has changed dramatically from when we wrote 16 years ago to where we are today. A lot has changed, but one thing that hasn't changed, I think, all coaching shows care. When we make intentional efforts to coach intentionally our leaders, it just shows that we really care for them. We think they're our greatest asset, which I know all of us believe that. It shows we care through effective training, because coaching involves effectively training and preparing those to whom you're going to be coaching in the days ahead, as you put them for the roles, as you engage them when an issue comes up, as you model for leaders what a healthy leader should look like. You're showing care for them because you're helping model the way for what it should look like. Yesterday, I talked about 4 leader essentials that we think are critical for leading an effective group. With modeling, or posture, as I like to talk about it in my Q&A, I talked a little bit about this. I'm really talking about the 4 characteristics of an effective leader. And those 4 characteristics, I think, are being humble, being teachable, being curious, and being intentional. Humble, teachable, curious, and intentional. And as coaches, one of the things that we can do is model for them what healthy leadership really looks like. And I don't think that begins with skill. I think that begins with posture, having a healthy posture towards the people we're coaching. So effective training shows care. Secondly, I think useful resourcing obviously shows effective shows care because effective coaching involves resourcing the leaders that we're trying to serve on a regular basis. It can be as simple as an article that we send them, or something that triggers, or something we read that we just send their way. But all of us had to do this during COVID. Digitally, we had to move in the moment to provide resources so people could do their groups online. And I know all of us had some, or many of us had some semblance of a digital format, but we all started looking around and stealing from each other some of the platform ideas so that we could really do this effectively. And so digitally, that was an example. Emotionally, providing the counseling resources as people were battling anxiety and stress. Again, effective coaching involves uh, providing those useful resources when people need them. Financially, helping them when with resources, because people couldn't pay bills and they saw there was a lot of, as you guys remember, it's hard to imagine, it's almost a year ago, but when the government was providing those short-term loans, people were wondering, where do we go? What do we do? And again, just helping resource people as they're having some of those conversations in their group time. Also, it involves, well, I'm not getting any movement here. Yeah, there we go. Timely support. Don't you love that? My belief is that every demon from the pit lives in technology. So, but I think coaching shows care through timely support when we're responsive, not on our timetable, but on the needs of others. And I joke with Steve a lot. I so appreciate his availability to people so that they're not alone, giving out their cell phone. I think it just speaks volumes of who he is as a leader and as an individual. And I think that's one of the things that effective coaching provides, is that we're timely in responding to the needs. We have in our current group right now 3 families that are in the special events business. And guess what we haven't had in the last year? A lot of special events. And so they have really been hemorrhaging and trying to pivot and create new opportunities for them to stay alive. We had a staff family tragically lost their son to suicide when school shut down here in Atlanta because of just that separation and what that was doing. And we've seen that. Obviously, we dropped everything when that happened. We were available, but that's what coaches do. They show care not on their timetable, but on the needs that are being presented in the time that they're being presented. And then last but not least, ongoing prayer, for sure. And I want to say, I've come to believe that prayer is probably the most underutilized leadership asset that we have available to us, more than our strategies, more than even some of our great content. As coaches, interceding, and those who lead coaches interceding on their behalf, but coaches praying for their leaders on an ongoing basis, systematic basis, just is showing care and expressing care through coaching to our leaders. I mean, I think most of us would say, who have been in ministry for a number of years, I wish I had prayed more and stressed less. You know, not wordsmith what our strategy is about, not worried about the pithy saying, but spent more time praying on behalf of the people who are actually doing the frontline ministry inside of our church. I just think ongoing prayer for us is a reminder that we only create the environment, but it's God that does the activity in the life of our groups and in the life of our group members. And so ongoing prayer is real important. All coaching shows care, but it shows care through specific ways, I think. Secondly, I want to say all coaching not all coaching is equal. And I'll add there, at least it shouldn't be. And I would say that coaching new leaders should be more intense and more intentional than more of your long-term leaders. The principle here is the less experienced the leader, the greater the need for equipping. And so there just needs to be more intentional investment in them. And by equipping, I just don't mean cognitive understanding, but also knowledge around, or an awareness, not just around knowledge, but around what they do. And again, around how they come off, which is their posture. So at one campus, and again, I'm just going to give you one campus as example, there's some very intentional steps for new leaders that they do. For example, they do a leader cohort, and this is a one-time thing for just new leaders that is all about mentoring them in their spiritual growth. And so they meet 6 times over 9 months for about 3 to 3.5 hours at a shot. And they take on some really important concepts. Some of it is book read that they read in advance for their time together. Some of it is video watch. Some of it is something they will listen to. But basically, they're looking around 4 questions. Who am I? How do I walk with God? How should I lead others? And how should I lead myself? Really, those 4 basic questions. Who am I? How do I walk with God? How should I lead others? How do I lead myself? Who am I is really about story and identity. How do I walk with God is all about community and disciplines. How should I lead others is all about posture and approach. How do I lead myself is about emotionally healthy spirituality. So that's a lot of investment, new leaders on their personal spiritual growth. But then there's leader connections twice a year. And this is where we will take volunteer coaches who are really established leaders, what I call our Delta Force, and have them meeting with new leaders twice a year. Then there are leader gatherings and huddles with other leaders that we do twice a year. And then there's a leader experiences that some of our campuses will do on an annual basis. They'll do a man night around fire pits, or they'll do a ladies night, which will be a gathering for something that doesn't involve fire pits. And they're generally just opportunities for guys to be together, for women to be together, to laugh, to be challenged, to sing together, and to be reminded of who they are, which we so easily forget. Now, for existing leaders, the principle is the more experienced the leader, the greater the need, not for equipping, but for encouragement. The longer they serve, the less they need knowledge, and the more they need to be known and appreciated. And that's just the premise. So there we take out the leader cohorts that is all around spiritual growth and spiritual development. But we do the leader connections with a staff coach once a year. We do the huddles twice a year, and then they're invited to the leader experiences, and many of them come, but that's as they have time and if they have interest. Now, the only other thing I would say is, not just as we just said, not all coaching is equal, not all coaches are equal. I would say this: most churches leverage volunteer coaches. We do to some degree, although we have a twist. Most volunteer coaches, we think, can effectively monitor a group. They can monitor it around the health and activity of the group. Is the group still meeting? What is the group studying? Are there any budding issues or challenges that need to be confronted? They're very good at monitoring the health and activity of a group. But I have found through the years is that most volunteer coaches struggle to effectively develop group leaders. And I think a lot of it is, to be honest with you, friends, it's a perception issue for some leaders, because they're looking at, who is this person? They're just like me, they've led. What do they know that I don't know? So for some of them, it's just a perception issue. For others, it is a real skill issue. We're really asking coaches to fill in a monitoring slot and not a development slot, which is okay. You just have to know that's what you're asking people to do. But that makes it less predictably scalable as our ministry grows if we're looking for volunteer coaches to develop our group leaders. What I've found is that most group volunteer coaches don't have the time to make the investment. Some don't have the experience to make it valuable. And so that's why we take, and it's been our personal decision to take our key volunteer leaders and turn them into coaches of new leaders, not just all leaders, if that makes sense. So did I stay inside my time, Carolyn?
No, but now Steve only has 6 minutes. So, so Dave, if you take your full 8, thanks so much, Bill. That was a lot. Just a quick clarifying question that came in the chat while we're on you. Is everybody required? Are all new leaders required to be going through that cohort?
Let's see. Required. That's such a important word, isn't it?
I think that's our answer. That gives us the answer.
I think outside of, let's be honest, they're adults. We can't require anything, but hopefully we can create thirst for them to want to attend.
Okay, got it. All right, Dave, you're up. Tell us about your coaching model and how it works.
Awesome, great. Okay, thanks, Bill. Love it. And I start with Bill is that our model has evolved over time. And again, I'm sure every one of you are dealing, you're like, I would just like some type of evolution. Is it working or what? Right. And so I came back in this role 18 years ago in the groups guy, and we had a coaching model and that was going, and I thought it was going great. And and the great thing about groups is when you gather people together, they're what we call our leaders. There's what we call a holy moment. And so this is beyond coaching, but it's a holy moment every time we gather. And when we have a leader join and say, I'm going to lead a group, they've also accessed a gift of the Holy Spirit God has given. Whether you call them hosts or leaders, the Holy Spirit is working. And the reason we talk about coaching is we want to make sure we support and come alongside those leaders so they can sustain leadership, right? And so, in other words, a sign that a leader is successful and that you are coming along is they're going to continue to lead. And so we've created a coaching system, L5s, L25s, the whole system. And I've had some great experiences with that situation with coaching in our ministry. But when I came in the role, all of a sudden I noticed the question you guys are asking, are people showing up to the meetings? Are they showing up to the coaching stuff? So I put my best hat on and say, let's figure out, we changed the name to Wingman, all those things. And I got our best volunteer leaders to tell us, hey, here's how it's going to work. And we just, again, some great stuff, but about 30% of our leaders. So then we begin to ask the question, are we failing? Because the coaching thing had become, in our mind, the thing that's going to take care of it. And coaching is important. It's important that we come alongside of our people coaching. So we just canned our coaching thing. We just said, forget it. And we're a little afraid so we could see, well, what's going to happen if we don't do our coaching model? And here's what happened. Nothing. Meaning nothing bad. Things were going great. We thought things were going better. We thought we weren't doing a good job. And I just want you to know right now, you might be having the same thing going on. You may say, hey, wait, we need to do a coaching model. That's going to fix it or be an evaluative. I just want you to know is you actually may not need a major coaching thing, but just some small tweaks in it. And I just want to share with you just quickly what we found. All of a sudden, it's like, well, why is this working? What's going on? And how does coaching fit in with us here at North Coast and what we're doing? And again, just looking at your models. And so, again, we gather people together, and retention was our big evaluator, and we weren't losing leaders. Again, it was like we're sustaining 85% of our leaders, which, man, that to us, we were like, whoa, this is working. So what is it and why we're able to do it? So here's the 5 quick things in my 4 minutes or 5 minutes, 20 minutes to the left. So I'm excited about sharing that. So Steve, we'll give you about 2, okay? So here's the first thing that we do, and you guys have talked about that. I'm not going to spend a lot of time, but referral-based leadership. Referral-based leadership. Let me see if I can see this. Here we go. Okay. Referral-based leadership. And in other words, when you join a group at North Coast, somebody needs to tell us that that you're a good leader, that you have done a good job, that you could be potentially a good leader for that. Here's our deal. What we expect from a person to be a Christian for at least a year is what we're looking at and hoping people to do there. We want them to have, we want also the referral to tell us, hey, they're committed to Jesus and they have integrity. And the last thing would be is that they have some social skills. In other words, they, like Bill was talking about last week, they need to be able to have friends. We say you got to be willing to be able to go out to dinner with them twice. That's kind of our thing. So that's referral based. So that will help you determine what kind of coaching you're going to deliver. That's going to help you evaluate. And the next one would be what we would call shared leadership. When we don't launch a group unless there's a host. So there's a lead person and a host person, and not a husband-wife deal, not spouses, but from from different families or different households. And right there is built-in support. Now you guys are going, wait, time out. Why in the world would you, you're telling us you got a double recruit. It is a different role. I mean, we still see them as leaders, but it's a different role. But this is part of that retention piece. Whenever you team people together, obviously they have more support. This is what coaching, the coaching idea is about. What kind of coaching, support, and care. So that is, again, another piece that, wait, okay, we really are giving them the support and care that they need. So that whole shared leadership piece there. And then the next one is attendance connection. We do attendance for all of our groups. The next morning they get an email. We've done this since day one. It used to be paper back in the day. And this is their roster of the people that are going to show up. But if this many people show up, okay, that's all right. If the next week this many people show up, you're like, wait a minute, okay. And if this many people show up, you're like, wait, is this group not doing well? How's the leader doing? What's going on? This guy in the middle stoked because if these are all singles, then he's excited. But the attendance is what we have found has been our best barometer on how we want to come alongside and coach. And that's been such a key thing. So we do that each Monday. We've got these summary reports that go to our people that aren't about statistics, but tell us about, hey, how's the leader going? And they don't tell us exactly, but it helps us to make those purposeful calls when we need to have a coaching moment. So that's how we do that. That's the report we get every Monday. All of our team gets for each group, and you can see very quickly how that group is doing. The next thing is training rhythm, and you have heard about. Bill was talking about that here also. It's not just training, but it's some kind of rhythm, and we do what we call a 1-3-30 24/7. One new leader training. We want all of our leaders to go through one new leader training. We have 3 leadership community meetings throughout the year, and in the fall is a big commissioning pep rally to get us going, and the others happen during the year. And then we do what we call 30 real-time weekly leaders guide. Again, an access to, they can get coached up in the middle of that. We're a sermon-based model. That's one of our key things. So each week they've got a 10 to 15 minute podcast or written leaders guide that they can check out and access. What we have, it's not required, but 70% of our leaders access that every week. And it's just been amazing. But here's the last one, 24/7 on-demand coaching. So when our leaders, or when somebody's signing up to lead a group, what's one of the questions they want to ask, or what reason they don't want to sign up? These problems, I don't want to deal with problems. What if I encounter something above my pay grade? And we do, as you've heard what Steve is doing and Bill, it says, hey, if you ever have a problem, here's my cell phone. Here's my cell phone. I want you to take this. And if you have a problem, call me 24/7 at any time, and we will help you. We just want you to do this. We want you to ask these 4 questions before you call us. Because your job of a leader isn't to solve people's problems. It's to help them find resources. And it's not even to give them all the answers. It's just to ask these 4 questions. And we have found these 4 questions are transformational for what it means to be a leader and to give them confidence. It's, how long has this been going on? Who else knows? If you've sought counsel from anybody on this. And the last one is, what do you want to do from here? Because those are the questions we're going to ask when they get on the phone. What we have found is that doesn't help our leaders just be leaders in their groups, but wherever they go, instead of being question answerers, they be question askers to help people engage in how to deal with their stuff. So that would lead us to this last one, is access and availability. Because we want to be available. So you can call us anytime. We give out our cell phones. And in a church our size, people go, "You're crazy to give out your cell phone." And we're like, well, if you train them right, they will actually take care of most of their issues, because we oftentimes treat leaders like followers. Most leaders, if they ask those 4 questions, are going to know what to do. They're going to know if they need to call you. They're going to know what kind of resource. Most of them are. And again, you're going to pay attention to what's going on, because all leaders of equal value, which Bill was talking about this too, but all don't need equal attention. So with our team, one of the things we say is we have one meeting with them one-on-one, and that's when we recruit them in the beginning. But after that, our team isn't required to meet with them one-on-one. But one of the questions we're always asking, is there somebody that needs your attention? And that's what the attendance piece gives such a key piece in the midst of that. So that is our model and how we work it out.
That's great. Thanks so much, Dave. You can see how different that is from Bill's. So Steve, you have 4 minutes. Have at it. What is the Saddleback model for coaching?
Thank you so very much. It's
I
a great.
love this is happening to Steve, because this is exactly what he did to me one year. So this is great.
You know, the great thing is I believe in the New Testament, not the Old Testament. So I know Carolyn represents the law, both in her Berkeley trained, attorney training, but also let me introduce you to the New Covenant, and that's the beautiful thing, Carolyn.
All right, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. You're so gracious. Let me kind of recalibrate us a little bit. Share this screen, shared this picture yesterday, and it's important that when we talk about coaching, and you can determine the terms you want to use, whether it's care or whatever you're doing, it's really, really important to understand, what are you coaching to? Why are you coaching? And just like I explained yesterday, we believe in a family system. The Bible is written on a family system. That's why one of the highest qualifications for a pastor is, can you run your family, in 1 Timothy? And it's part of why you see the motif throughout the New Testament is always parent-child, not teacher-pupil. And so it's important that when we're talking about coaching, that we're looking at it in a family system. I love one of the phrases we have at Saddleback, that is, people don't do what you expect, they do what you inspect. And I know many times we do a great job of laying down our expectations, but sometimes you have to inspect. So kind of like with my kids, if they know my expectations, but many times, I've got to inspect what's happening to figure out, are they on course or not? And so part of it, I show this diagram, is our version of a mature disciple, and we can go into this, in the Q&A, but we balance the 5 verbs in the life of the Great Commission and the Great Commandment in every person. The group plays a huge role in that. And we talked about 2 guardrails, and whether you're talking about training or coaching, they intermesh all the time with each other, because training is coaching and coaching is training. And so we have a head guardrail. And yesterday I talked about how we have our leader training pathway, where, and again, just like my 2 brothers on the call, not my sister, no, my 2 brothers, is that, things have modified all the time. Dave's got a breakout into the second hour, Dave Alford does. And because our leader training is taking on another twist, and it's changing up again from the pathway I showed you yesterday. But we have to have leader training. You've got to have a curriculum pathway. Curriculum is your best tool in training and in coaching to help you achieve the health that we have here in letter A. And then there's tools that you have. And we don't use attendance, and although attendance is a great barometer, but we measure health through our health assessments and our group assessments. And so we're more concerned about health than we are on the attendance. But what I want to calibrate us to today, right now, is this heart guardrail. Because when you're talking about the heart guardrail, that's where people understand where you're at. And so what I want to do is, talk about 5 things that I've learned from coaching. In the 23 years I've been at Saddleback, our coaching has evolved many ways. And the first thing I would say, and this will echo a little bit what Bill is talking about, it's strategic care, not equal care. So often, I learned that, hey, for every leader, every lead, if you have 5 leaders, they need a coach, and you have 5 coaches and they need a divisional leader. And that was part of something that came from another culture, and it's a training. And if it works for you, I would say, oh my goodness, do it. But the way I stumbled onto this is our life expectancy of someone who would help group leaders try to get to health was they have about a 6-month lifespan. And the thing is, I have a gift of recruiting, so I could always outpace our number of groups in recruiting people. They would say, hey, I'm out of coaching. And I would say, great, fine, bye, see you later. And then what happened is then when we started doing a campaign strategy, groups outpaced what I could recruit or what our teams could recruit. And so we decided, hey, let's find out why people quit. And so we went back to a lot of the people who were coaching and just asked them why they quit. And the number one reason that they gave was people didn't call me back. And part of what that's done, and you can, I can talk about this in the Q&A, but we've broken our groups into 4 buckets. They're either new, seasoned, veteran, or stubborn. And every time we get a stubborn group, we're trying to get them to go to North Coast. I go, there's a great church right down the street from us. That would be so much better than our church would be for you.
You're a giver, Steve.
I'm a giver. But, each one of those have a different training, and each one of those have a different coaching expectation. So remember, you want to talk about strategic care, not equal care in your groups, because they're all at different. Because the newer the group, the less they understand what health is. The longer the group, the more they understand what health is. And if they're hitting your metrics, then the beautiful thing is that they can go into leadership. And I can talk more about that in the Q&A if that would help. The other thing I want to talk to you about, number 2, is, and I learned this through my kids also, if I can not mess up what I'm doing. Let me share again. Another thing that I learned with my kids was this diagram. And in this diagram right here is, I learned that when I was raising my kids, it takes a village to raise your children. And any of you that have kids, oh my gosh, you would echo that over and over again. And it takes a village to raise a healthy group. And the thing I'd want to challenge you is, when I started in small group ministry, it was just like, have a coach, have a coach, have a coach, have a coach. And when we changed our paradigm, we just changed the name, because you got to change a name so people understand something is different. So we went from coach, a term I loved because I'm into sports, and we changed it to community leader. And if you see on this diagram, well, the thing I would challenge you to do is identify the things that are in your village that are producing a healthy group. And, we have our community leader that plays an active part. We have leader training. Social media plays an active part. Having a Q&A, answering frequently asked questions. Your website should be a training and coaching tool. Doing spiritual retreats with your small group leaders, whether it's 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever it is a part of the coaching structure. Your senior pastor plays an active role in group health. Your weekend services, how they mention it and what they talk about. Your newsletters, your e-newsletters. We have, we're trying, our healthy groups are balancing the 5 purposes. And so no shock, our newsletters are giving an idea for them to do in their group every month. The small group pastor, our small group pastors, they'll oversee anywhere from 250 to 300 groups. And I know they're all laughing right now because they're going, wish that was it. But most of them, we try to get them in that 250 group zone. So they are a primary contact, and the community leader is a primary contact. How you interface with your groups on the patio at your small group table is important. We have a web streaming service that is where they can get all of their curriculum, all their training, all the modules of training, all the advanced training once you've gone through our leader training 1 and 2. But you have to have a page. I would echo what Bill says. Every one of our small group pastors, they have a prayer team that's working with that. So this diagram right here is our village that would do that. The third thing I would say to you, so it's strategic care, not equal care. Number 2, it takes a village to raise a healthy group. You got to identify the village. It's not just a coach that's going to get you to the end game. The third thing is your primary care system, which is your small group pastor and your community leader. And I know so many people ask me, how long before I need community leaders to help me with it? Well, it's a scalability question. You know, again, think through a family system. You can think through, you know, when do you need more help to raise your kids healthy? And so you want to think through, and we can talk about that in the Q&A. I don't want to get wrapped into that, but here's the number 3 is your primary care for building health cannot abdicate their responsibility. And actually, I learned this from Cheryl Bochelder, who actually attends North Point over in Atlanta. She was the former CEO of Popeye's Chicken, and she taught me about skip leveling. And she was talking about in a franchise, we learn some things from the main store owners, but when we talk to the customers, we learn so much more. And one of the things I've learned, the only way you monitor health is to inspect periodically what's going on. And so when you talk to a group leader, if they don't know what health is, if they don't know answers to certain questions, you can kind of guess that there may be a little leak in the system. So you've got to work through that process of saying, I got to learn how to skip level. No matter what kind of village you have a biblical responsibility, Proverbs 27:3, to know the condition of your flocks. You know, we have 19 campuses and we have plenty of staff that take care of their campuses. But when the end of time comes, I'm still responsible for that health metric that's there. And so you got to learn how to skip level. Number 4, you need a pathway with your primary care people. And one of the things that I would show you right here, and we have a booklet that, you know, teaches this. And I'll show you a quick page out of it. But we know that you've got to be somebody's friend before you can teach them on how to be a leader. And once they're a great leader, you can really coach and speak into their life. So whoever the primary care people are, they have got to build a relational guidelines. They've got to build relationship equity with that. Now, one of the things that we learned is that even with explaining something, like we said, hey, you just need to be a friend with people. And we give them, everything's an acrostic at Saddleback. So friend is acrostic for our primary care, leaders an acrostic, and coaches acrostic. But what we found out from people is that even when you say just find common ground, they're not sure what it is and they don't know what to do. And so you give them ideas on how to do the primary care with that. And again, in our training with people who are dealing with primary care, whether it's a pastor, whether it's a coach who's all volunteer, there are people that love to do that. We have about 350 volunteer coaches that help oversee the health and care of our network, and they're right there. So part of that is, you know, you've got to look through, and whether you do a cute little booklet or whatever it is, you've got to have things that will help explain what that village is. So we talked about strategic care, not equal care. The second thing was it takes a village to raise a healthy group. We talked about number 3, you need primary care, can't abdicate their responsibilities. Number 4, you need a pathway. And the last thing is data is king. And here's what I'd wrap this up with is just hard and soft data. Hard data is data you want. When's the group meeting? Did they do the attendance? Did they do the leader training one? Did they tell us their roster? Did they give us all the information they want? But the most important thing that you can do with your groups is soft data. And soft data is what they want. They want to tell their story to you. We tell all of our leaders and all of our community leaders, if you don't know your leader's birth date and you don't know their spouse's name, you don't have to be able to say their last name, Carolyn. But if you don't know the spouse's name, you don't know the spouse's birthday, you don't know the kids' names, you don't know the kids' birth dates, you can't build relational equity if you don't know that soft data. And I'll just close it with this example. When we took our daughter, Erica, to college, Rick texted me or emailed me, I can't remember what it was, but he texted to me that, hey, I know tomorrow is a tough day. This is 6 years ago. It's a tough day for you. You're going to get on a plane with a family of 4, and you're going to come home with a family of 3. And just know Kay and I are praying for you. That meant more to me than his last 6 sermons, which I don't tell him. But that meant more to me because he knew me. He knew my soft data. And if you want to get health going in your church, you got to know soft data. And Carolyn, I'm not even going to ask if I went over my time because
I was just thinking, Steve, that you were saying you're a New Testament guy. I'm feeling you're more like the Judges guy with, everyone does what is best in their own eyes. Kind of feel like you ran with that. But it was so good. And actually, if you'd like to hear more about all 3 of those different systems and flesh that out and ask your questions, because thanks to Steve, we only have like 10 minutes. So if you'd like to ask more questions in your breakout, but all 3 of them will have individual Zoom breakouts after the session. So you can follow them in there and ask to your heart's content, because I'll have a lot more time for that. But here's a few that came up that are came up in our Facebook group when I had asked. Thank you guys for putting those in there last week. And then there's a bunch, actually, there's some themes that are emerging. So we're just going to hit some of the bigger themes. One of the themes question is around, when do you know when to start a coaching level? And I know you've kind of touched on it a little bit, but I think the question comes from a place of pain for a lot of us. If you're the small group point person, you are the coach until you get to a certain level where you realize you can't be there for everyone all the time and can't have that kind of relational equity we're talking about. So if a church is newer to the small group model and ministry, and they're starting a coaching system, at what range of number of leaders would it be time to put a coach in place? And Dave, you already have your box lit up, so I feel like you're ready to talk.
Yeah, I am. Yeah. Again, we're different model. We're like, you can call us, you can talk to us. And so I guess when you start losing your leaders, when you're not sustaining group, it's like, wait, how are they not getting care? So we don't have like, hey, here's your coach. We're like, hey, here's your person to care for you. Leaders also, or they're in a group of people in our system, they're already in a group of people that they can care and support with them. And that's that leader host model. They really are having that support in the midst of that. So that's again where that attendance piece comes in the midst of that. So if you're not caring if you're losing leaders, if your leaders aren't sustaining, that's a sign that you're not healthy. So for us, the retention of leaders is one of our health signs.
I think one of the questions is also asking about like the span of care piece. And I know, Bill, you guys are really strategic. Bill was kind enough to be on a podcast for Group Talk a couple of years ago. Gosh, it might have almost been even more than 2 years ago. And it was on metrics, which is not the most, exciting topic, but that's one of our top 5, Bill, because people need to know, what do we measure? Exactly as Steve said, it's what you inspect. So if you can speak to kind of the general numbers, obviously this is not the gospel. This is just general numbers of when you should start thinking about recruiting that next layer.
Yeah, Steve would tell you the most exciting topic is budget, but that's a different issue.
This is true. That's also in the top 10.
Yes. But no, I think if you're the point leader for groups in your church, there is a season that it is so incumbent upon you to stay close to the gunpowder. So you can pivot where you need to. You can address issues as they come up. I think it is, we can create our systems prematurely and get ourselves out of, so anyone who is leading one of our campuses also leads a certain number of leaders, because they lose touch if they don't do that, for sure. So, but I think somewhere in that magical 8 to 12 number of leaders is that time when you need to be thinking about how, helping set up. If you're a church that is growing, if you are building your small group community, you're anticipating greater participation in the future, then I think somewhere at that point, 8 to 12 is a healthy place to get it started. It doesn't mean you're not involved. Again, I look at, in the Q&A, we'll talk more about the specifics of how we leverage it, but volunteer coaching is so good. It's with some aspects, but as a leader, I want to be involved in so much of the content that they're getting. And so, just try to differentiate it a little bit in terms of what that expectation may look like.
Yeah, and that's helpful. So, Steve, when it comes to volunteer coaching and recruiting these coaches, and you guys have tons of them, what are the requirements for them? Are they required to have been in a small group for a particular period of time? I know Dave talked about the referral basis, the recommendation, which is a great way to see what it is. But sometimes we get in that framework of like, it feels like a promotion of sorts, where you you take your best leaders and make them coaches, but maybe they don't have the skill set for that. Like, how do you balance those tensions when you go to look for a coach?
Yeah, and I think one of the mistakes we can do is think a good small group leader can make a great coach, because it's the old adage, a great shoe salesman doesn't make a great shoe sales manager. And so you want to look for the people that have a passion towards spending time. So you want to look at availability, and you also at the same time want to look at capability. So if you look at availability and capability, some people have the capability, but because of season of life, they just don't have the availability. And at the same time, too, you want to be able to, utilize people with where their bandwidth is. So if they could take a couple groups, that's great. If they could take 5 groups, that's great. It really depends on what there's so many variables, because it depends what kind of groups they have. It also depends what technology support you have. So if you don't have much technology support with your tools and electronics and streaming services to know how people are engaging towards your health metrics, then you're going to have more hand-to-hand combat in the field with that. So there's such a balance with each of it. But I would say they all need to value community. They need to be in a group. I'm in a group, but I don't lead our group because our group would suck more than if I let it. So it's really important that you get the people that love community, but they'll be willing to help you work towards the health metrics, and they have to have obviously a passion for people. So availability, capability would be the guidelines.
Right. You can find out more about their nuts and bolts, but I wanted to spend just the remaining few minutes asking these guys a question that they're not prepared for, but they can talk about anything. So given I've noticed, and you guys probably heard this in when you heard me read their bios, that they've both been in the trenches of this ministry for decades. And I know now there's so much more transition and flux along the way. But I think it would be helpful for us to hear and learn. And someone asked this question on the Facebook page, and I thought it's such a good one, given the wisdom with the three of you. If you were starting over today in small groups ministry, what is one thing that you would do differently? There's an opportunity to be transparent about just one, but what is one thing you would do differently? And I know the three of you mentor a lot of young people in ministry, so maybe it's something that you have shared before, but any thoughts on what you might do differently? I should have given this to you in advance. This is a moderating.
We're so old, we can't hear what you said, Carolyn. One more time, please.
I think there's something, it's like Eugene Peterson's The Long
Oh,
Obedience
yeah.
in the Same Direction. The older I get, the more respect I have for longevity in ministry is hard and it's rare. It's becoming more rare. And so I think, I think it's a valuable question.
No, it is. Steve, did you have something? I'll come back
No,
to
go
it.
ahead. Go
Other
ahead.
than just
Yeah.
mocking me,
Save
he
me,
had
Bill.
nothing.
Save me.
No, what I was just going to say is definitely keep your model simple as you start off. Simple, 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 simple. Do not make it complex. Do not try to create something for every potential need, experience, demographic that you're thinking. Put it in the big boilerplate areas and run it and gun it hard. But I would pay a lot of attention for yourself and for your leaders into the keeping of their souls. I am so grateful for Dallas Willard. I'm so grateful for John Ortberg. I'm so grateful for John Mark Comer. I'm so grateful for people who have spoken important words for us in ministry, because we can operate in such a fashion that the imagery of Jesus' words of gaining the world and losing your soul can be our reality one day to the next. And you know this. In one moment, he is the King, he is the Lord, he is the Son of God. And the next moment, I never knew the guy. And so that's where we are as people. And before we're leaders, we're followers. And so let's just make sure we're following well and we're paying attention to the whispers and to the condition of our soul. That's what I'd say.
Thank you, Pastor Bill. That's really good.
I'll let Dave go.
Thanks, Steve. Wow, good question. Over the years, again, was trained to do groups when I was in youth ministry, Christian ed major, the whole thing, because groups are important. They create relationships. So I thought it was a relationship thing that we do, and it is. But I just realized, so through the years, initially groups were to get the Bible in people, or to deliver information, and suddenly realizing that relationship with people, the goal of the group is to not just get the Bible, is how to follow Jesus and lock arms. The enemy wants to render us powerless because we've got the power of the Holy Spirit in us. So sin and addiction is the obvious one. But here's the next one. The other two are really subtle. You guys totally will get the third one. The second one is he wants to make our faith complicated. And he wants us to make our programs complicated. He wants us to do a bunch of shoulds. And he wants our goal to have people be faith like ours as leaders and not listen to where people are at educationally, how they understand, how their abilities of understanding scripture, just so many different levels. So make our faith complicated. And the last one would be, he wants to keep us isolated. And I praise God for the number of people on this, because I am so passionate about helping our people develop relationships. People don't know how to create friendship. You're not just getting the words, and we are helping people know how to build relationship. They don't. Everybody doesn't have a friend. And so as a church, we have an opportunity to do that. So that's been a journey for me, and I am just incredibly passionate about that. And in your ministries, everyone, your ministry is so important to your church and your community in the groups.
And now more than ever, Dave, I appreciate that so much. We know from the pandemic, from the year we've all had, that the number of friends that people have had has shrunk down to less than what they even had before. And it was pretty bad before, and the pandemic of loneliness, that it's been so prevalent and it's gotten worse. So we hold the keys to people's emotional, spiritual, mental health. And our churches are going to be those beacons of hope for those people. So absolutely. So thank you. And Steve, what do you wish you had done differently, or what if you were starting over?
I think of course, you know, the older you get, the more advantage life has for you, because you look back and you see all this, the way you stubbed your toe or you tripped or you fell. And I think I'm talking to people that are, they're just starting out. The combination is you got to know your Achilles heel. You gotta have a team around you. I think it's, you know, so interesting. After Jesus was, you know, tempted in the desert, the first thing he did, you know, he got a small group together. And part of it is you got to have community around you so that you can confess temptation before you have to confess sin, because it's the isolation, it's the pressure, it's the lack of understanding your Achilles heel that, you know, gets you in those moments where the enemy can steal your calling. And we've seen it in the news recently, time after time. A pivotal person falls, and having those brothers and sisters around you that can speak truth into your heart and into your soul. But part of it, it starts with, you know, do you know your Achilles heel? I mean, you do know your Achilles heel, but can you put the people around you so that you can, you know, confess the temptation to them before you confess the sin? Because so often in community, it goes the other way around, and it wrecks my soul, whether it's because of burnout, because of moral failure, because of whatever. Someone doesn't complete the race and fulfill their call. And we can teach anybody. I mean, everybody on this screen, and I mean everybody, all 400 of you, you can teach the components to build a healthy small group system. But you got to be around for the whole game in order to win the race. So, which is two separate metaphors right there. So, Carolyn, I thought you'd appreciate me going in my
No, we get
easy
it.
zone.
Well, and partly why I asked the question is because I wanted you guys to hear their hearts. These aren't guys that just have a system down or just have these, how-tos because they're at these hugely influential churches. They have hearts that love Jesus and love connecting people with Jesus and connecting people into community, because that helps people grow. So you got a taste of their hearts, and you can follow one of them into one of their breakouts for the Q&A and ask things in a more personal environment there. So we're going to take a break for about 10 minutes or so. At 10:15, you'll be going into your breakout session. So your breakout leaders will be ready there on their Zoom links to receive you. And so you need to go back to the original landing page and then click on the breakout that's linked there for the one that you want to go to. And then at 11, the same thing happens again. You go to your second breakout. And then today, as Philip mentioned, we're going to all come back to this main page at 12 o'clock. So breakout leaders, be sure to remind people to come back so that we can just have a final closing time together. Just for a few minutes. You're not going to want to miss that. And so we hope kind of to wrap up the day together. So Bill, Dave, and Steve, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and for having just the heart that you have, and for showing us what it looks like to go the distance in ministry and to do it so well and with such, as David says, what is it? David led with pure heart and skilled hands. And that is what you guys model for us. So thank you so much for that. So everyone is dismissed. Go stretch, get coffee, whatever you need to do, and go on to your next breakout. Have a great morning.
Hi, Carolyn.